All right. Hello. I would say hello, everyone, but hello. But thank you so much for joining us. And Jacqueline and I are just going to kind of walk through what the Vista quarterly report looks like. So whether you're joining us live or watching our fabulous video that we uploaded to YouTube, you get the information that you need for your upcoming report. So I can just start maybe a brief introduction because I know not all of the Minnesota folks have met me. So my name is Monique Ellefson. I'm the program manager for community impact for Iowa and Minnesota Campus Compact, and I work very closely with Jacqueline and the Minnesota team up there to do the Vista program. I am based out of Des Moines, Iowa, but our Vista program, as you all know by now, has merged, so we're functioning in both states. So. Alrighty, I'm gonna share my screen, which is just going directly to the report link, which you should all have. And if you don't, please let me or Jacqueline know and we'll make sure you get that. So this is the reporting document or the online form, whatever you would like to call it, that we will be utilizing. And so I realize it may be a different structure for most of you, but the information should be the same because ultimately what we do with these reports is we just turn around and provide the information to the Corporation for National Community Service, so to Vista headquarters, and that really just serves to not only, are we required to report on the success of how things are going, but really allows us to advocate for your projects locally and tell the story of like what's happening. So that's what the functions are serving. That's why the questions are very similar. It's because those are the questions that come directly to us from CNCS or from Vista headquarters. And so that's why the language seems very similar. So even though it's a new form, hopefully the process isn't too terribly different. Hi. So this is just kind of the homepage. It just kind of explains what I just mentioned. We are always happy to help. Don't ever feel like you're bothering us by shooting us an email or giving us a phone call if you have questions. If it's the same question from report to report, that's okay too. Some of our supervisors that we've been working with for a long time still get caught up with some of the language, and that's because it's just very Vista specific. And so don't ever feel like you're bothering us by asking, what does volunteer mean again? Because we understand. So this is the actual reporting structure for this upcoming year. And so what you'll notice is that this year spans from September 2019 to September 2020 for reporting dates. And that's because our Vista grant operates on that calendar. So even though it may not align with your Vista member's term of service, or with your partnership with us, that's why that reporting structure looks that way. And that's how we have it set up for when it matches when we have to submit reports to CNCS. And so if that seems a little wonky to you, it probably is, and that's why. So essentially for this first report, we're of course operating in the timeline from June 1st, 2019 to the end of August, so the August 31st. And so basically all you need to worry about reporting is whenever your Vista member started. So if you have a brand new Vista member, a brand new project, you don't need to report obviously for those dates that your member wasn't serving with your program. Just, kind of start whenever your member started. So don't get caught up too much on that one. But if you were kind of continuing, or you had a continuing member, so someone who re-enrolled for a second year, someone who maybe started in February or April, you can still report on, of course, that full reporting timeline. But this does show you when upcoming reports will be due to. All right, so the first part here is that you're just going to put your name. So I'll just kind of showcase mine and your email. Your email is really important here because this is what's going to, once you submit, it will send you the link saying, hey, here's what you just submitted. With the report, with this online form, we also have it set up so that you can work on it as you go. So if you start it today and you're like, oh no, I have something else come up, I can't complete it, you can save and resume later. And that is this little button down here. That's the save and resume later. So you click that and then it automatically emails you at the email you provided, and it will give you the link to that information that you've been working on. So you can just kind of go back to it. Jacqueline and I will not have access to your draft version. And then the other thing to note is that if you don't submit it within 30 days of when you actually like started, so when they send you that email with the link, then your information will be lost. So, and we won't have access to it. So those are two things just to note. But sometimes what folks like to do, because we give you all the questions up here, like at the top or whatever, is sometimes they'll work on it in a Word document. We haven't had, I think I can count on one hand how many issues we've had with people like losing information. So it's very, very rare. This is a very good online platform that we utilize. And so don't anticipate those technical problems, but you never know. So whatever your personal preference would be. So yes, your name, your email. The one important thing here is that, and I know this is different for all of the Minnesota sites, but while your Vista member is the one who's directly kind of working on the project, you as the supervisor are ultimately responsible for the project's information, success, output, all of those things. And so it is really crucial that you're the one submitting this document and not the Vista member. You, of course, can work with the Vista member because, you know, they're doing the things day in and day out, but they should not be the one submitting this on your behalf. This should really be coming from you as a supervisor. So that's something else I'll mention. So the next question here just asks you to select your site. A good pro tip that I actually just learned, and I've been using this format for like a year and a half, it's fine. You can just type in, like start typing and it will come up for you, like your site. So it's a long list if you don't want to scroll. I know sometimes I'm like visually overwhelmed by that. So you can just start typing it in and it will come up. And this just, of course, is you selecting, oh yeah, this is my organization, but this will also populate your specific performance measures that are related to your site. So this is a very important step because it will determine what the rest of your report looks like. Let us go with, all right, so this first section is numeric reporting. This is general information that the Corporation for National and Community Service asks of us every year. So this is kind of supplemental to what might be actually happening within your project. So I want to start by saying, and this is like outlined here in that information box, but if you put a 0 because you're like, this has nothing to do with my project, that's okay. It's not going to count against you. We're not going to think a certain way. CNCS isn't going to think a certain way. This is purely just if you have the information, just provide it. And if you don't, just kind of move along. That's okay. And so this is what the information that we ask here, of course, is supplemental to Vista, but just know this is kind of what they're trying to look at the national like snapshot of what AmeriCorps Vista members are doing across the country. And then they use that to like leverage for support in the legislature and get some of that bipartisan interest based on, you know, what's happening nationally. So, you know, this last year they added in questions about like the opioid crisis or veteran services. So sometimes they do change. If they ever change, we'll let you know. But just for now, don't worry if you have nothing to report, especially if your member just started in July, that's totally okay. But if you have the information, please feel free to like plop it in here. So the first section asks about community volunteers. The one distinction I'll make here is that volunteers does not mean your Vista volunteer. So this would be as a result of your Vista project or your Vista member, you have, you know, recruited new volunteers or you're managing new volunteers. And so the distinction there, and it's kind of listed out here, but recruited means that they enlisted. So let's say, you know, you go to a local community event and you're tabling, just seeing if people are interested. That would be a recruited volunteer because they like signed up with their email for your listserv or something, but you don't actually know if they serve with you. Once you actually get a volunteer in and you're like providing them training, or your Vista volunteer or you or someone else in your organization is managing them, that's what a managed volunteer means. And so this is, we're always going to ask since the last reporting period. So again, just important to keep in mind what those reporting periods are, because we do like add them up at the end for all of our reporting. They do break it down into other categories, but those are the biggest two that we always get questions about, is like, what is a volunteer and what is the difference between managed and recruited? So again, if you don't have anything, just put 0. You'll notice these questions aren't asterisked like as required, so you don't even have to put zeros if you don't want to. You can just kind of like go down, plop in a number where you feel like you can, where we have the information to share, and otherwise you can just kind of move right through this first part of the report. The next section is resource development. So again, this is still looking at that national snapshot that CNCS is asking. So don't think that you have to be doing this. This is just something that they're interested in and trying to use to leverage additional resources and support for CNCS programs nationally. So dollar value of new cash leverage. So this would not include your Vista cost share. I get that question a couple of times, which is okay, but something I'll just mention. And so the really important thing here, so like let's say cash resource would be a really good example of that, would be like a grant. So if your Vista got a grant for like $5,000, or they helped write the grant or did some research so that your resource development person could write a grant, the really important thing here is that you list out what that cash resource is. So not just provide a number, but you actually say, this is what that number is. So maybe $2,000 was for, you know, grant A, and then $3,000 was for grant B. So we just have to have like an itemized list of what that looks like, because otherwise it's just kind of a number and we don't really know how to contextualize that. So that's a really important thing. And also the other thing is, if, because I know this is a lot of information, but just know, like, if as Jacqueline and I and the team go through looking at everyone's reports, if we have any clarifying questions or we're like, oh, what did you mean by that? We'll just follow up with you. So don't ever feel like we're going to have a, oh, no, you didn't submit all the information we asked you to. We're always going to follow up with you just because we want to know anyway. Or we'll say, wow, that's really exciting, because that is really exciting, especially if your Vista is submitting a grant and they got it. So that's really exciting. In kind is, of course, just like donations. So this can be more like of an estimation. So some of our sites that work with like food pantries, you know, could be, well, we know like 100 pounds of food is equivalent to like however many dollars. So you could just say that, you know, for the dollar amount, I really don't know, so I'm just going to do $1 per pound, which might be really off. But you would just say like 100 pounds of food donated, something like that. And then if you can provide like where it was from local business, and then you would put the name. So that's what that is. Organizations and systems. So this is kind of getting at the capacity of your organization. So again, if you have information to provide, great. And if you don't, you can just move along. But this is referring to any like partnerships that you might have. So organizations that you partner with that are reporting that their organization is more efficient, so they're kind of operating better. You can do that. And then this would be the same for the next question, which is acting about effectiveness. So are you more effective? I know sometimes those words get a little confusing. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll add in some helpful text there too, because I feel like sometimes I get a little confused. I don't know about you, Jacqueline, but sometimes efficient and effective can mean similar things in my head. So I'll make sure to follow up with that. And then, all right, the last section for that first part, which is the one, again, that's kind of the national snapshot for CNCS, is beneficiaries. So again, if you don't have the information, because this isn't like pertinent to what your Vista project is doing or what your organization is focused on, that's okay. But again, if you do have the information, you can provide it. So number of new youth supported, number of new adults served by opioid programming. So this is where like some of that like national interest is coming into the report. And then adults in job training placement programs. So again, if you have it, great. And if you don't, you just move right along. Before I jump into the next section, I know we have a few people now who joined us. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask myself and Jacqueline, since you have us both here. You can always throw something into the chat box. I am recording this, and then we'll share it out with everyone later too, so you can always access it. And then you, of course, can always reach out to Jacqueline or myself if you have specific questions as you're kind of going through the report later on. All right, so for the narrative report, this section should look very similar to what you may have submitted in the past if you had a Vista program in the past. If not, then this is just kind of the standard narrative reporting structure that most Vista programs have, because again, this is the information we have to turn around and report directly to CNCS about your project. So the first question here is about challenges. Again, this is just verbatim from the prompts that we receive. So just discussing really like what challenges has your organization or your Vista project encountered during the reporting period. So that could be something that has been resolved or something that is ongoing. And if it has been resolved, definitely say that and how that came about. And if not, then just say maybe what your plans are. So this is just going to be, you know, oh, we were hoping to host a volunteer, you know, recruitment event, and then we got rained out. You know, that would be a challenge. This could be a challenge where maybe your Vista needed some additional training, and you weren't anticipating that. That could be a challenge about the project itself. So anything else that you would add for this one, Jacqueline?
I don't think so.
Okay. I was like, I feel like I can't always come up with ideas off the top of my head. The next question is asking about partnerships or collaboration. So just talking about how your Vista project has improved a partnership or collaboration with other organizations. You know, that would mean highlighting any new partnerships maybe that came about as a direct result of your Vista or your project. So the really important thing to remember when you're doing a report for your Vista project is that it doesn't necessarily mean this is what your Vista member themselves is doing. And that distinction exists because, let's say, you know, you as the site supervisor are, you know, obviously working very closely with the Vista, you're kind of directing them, but by having the Vista kind of come in and focus on that specific project, that maybe gives you a little bit more time and capacity to work on other things that still tie to your underlying Vista goals, right? Of like getting people out of poverty, doing kind of things organizationally. So the other thing to really keep in mind here is like, you don't just have to say, this is what my Vista did. You can also talk about what's the bigger impact at your organization as a result of your Vista project or in kind of relation to your Vista project. So it can be what your Vista is doing and then kind of Vista member adjacent is what I like to say, and that, you know, what's the next step is to like, okay, we have a Vista coming in providing all of this support. What does that then allow us to do outside of that work? So the next question is about sustainability. So Vista's obviously very focused on, you know, you get a Vista member for a year, your Vista project maybe lasts for 3 years. What are you going to be doing to build on those systems and processes to create a sustainable effort, right, that your Vista member is doing every day? So maybe it's not, this is what my Vista member is doing today, and, you know, in 3 years, we'll have someone else just doing that. It could be, you know, an underlying process or structure that they're creating so that, you know, it can be absorbed into like a volunteer job or, you know, another staff person's position. So this is just kind of us keeping tabs on what efforts are being taken by the Vista member or by your organization to really develop and work on your project sustainability, or how do you kind of anticipate or envision moving forward and what those plans might be. So this could be, you know, oh, we're going to have a new volunteer recruitment strategy, so all of the volunteers will come in and just kind of work on what the Vista is doing, or we hired a new staff person, or we're working on getting funds for a grant that would hire a new staff person. Stuff like that is a good example of sustainability. The next one is other accomplishments. So just highlighting any accomplishments that have occurred as a result of your Vista project. So again, what your Vista is doing or what your Vista project is allowing your organization to do that you want to share. So these would be, you know, this is like a really unique opportunity that came up, or this is something we really want to highlight or showcase from what our member has been able to accomplish or what we've been able to accomplish in our community as a result of our members' work, stuff like that. So yes. And then the last one, which I always think kind of ties in, but is about stories. And so these are any stories from program beneficiaries, volunteers, or others that you would like to share. And so sometimes I get questions, or some folks think that this has to be one of those like highlights of like a life-changing story, you know, like oh wow, this person came in and now their life has just changed, right? But that's not the narrative we're looking for specifically, or even CNCS's. This is kind of looking at what is, you know, what's just the story of like any day at your organization, like what's happening, that you kind of want to highlight as like, this is a really good example of like why we have the Vista program, or why our organization is so focused on this issue area. So it doesn't just have to be kind of that awe-inspiring like story that you would see on like social media, let's say, but this is definitely something that if you have something that kind of highlights or just really captures the reason that you're doing this would be a good place to put that. And the other thing too, because this does mention like program beneficiaries, so just keeping in mind like your Vista members are doing a lot of capacity building, right? So they're not usually on the ground working with some of your beneficiaries that are coming through your organization. And so maybe they might struggle to think of some ideas on their own because they're like, well, I just sit at a computer all day. But this is just, again, a reminder of what is that capacity that's being built, like the sustainability of the project overall, what's the actual impact in your community that it's having. So just kind of framing it, that might help too. And the last part in the narrative section is just asking for attachments and links. And so this is specifically looking at, you know, any of those bigger things that your member has accomplished. So we have examples here like a presentation or a document that was created. In the past, we've had people, you know, some of our Vista members have like presented in front of their organization's board. So that would be a good example of like, here's the speech that they gave, you know, that kind of highlights what they're doing and hoping to accomplish in the community and stuff like that. The other thing that this question is really asking for is any links, or maybe, it says newspaper clippings, but I feel like that's still just a link. Maybe that's some old language there. But this is like, you know, what's happening in your local news. So like a local newspaper, if you're on campus, it could be the student newspaper, things like that. But CNCS is always looking for ways to kind of highlight in those special stories. So if your organization or your Vista project specifically, right, is being mentioned locally in the news, or even like not locally, maybe nationally, who knows, then definitely make sure you're including that. Also make sure you just kind of reach out to Jacqueline or myself, and we'll always, you know, let our program officers know outside of just reporting structures too. So we're always happy to share those stories on our platforms as well. And then if you have any like things to upload, then you have opportunities here to upload files. All right, that was the narrative section. Who's excited? Any questions thus far? If not, that's okay. I know that they'll come later, so you know who to reach out to. All right, the last and most important part of the report is your performance measures. Again, many of you may have just started in July, so don't feel like putting a 0 is a bad thing. That's like just a reality check, right? Like, we're only 3 months in, not even sometimes, so that's okay. But these are, again, going to be tied specifically to your organization. I might have to go through and just double check, but for all of our Minnesota sites specifically, you're going to just be looking at these anti-poverty outputs and outcomes. And these are, again, just taken directly from, they should just be taken directly from your host site application to us. And so they should seem very relevant. So number of individuals served, if your member started in July, you're reporting from, you know, July 8th to August 31st. So if you have a number for how many individuals were served, you can plop that in there. And then the next question is just asking you to provide a description of what that number means. And so this is something that we have added in because it really helps us from report to report, help you from report to report. So like, let's say, you had 10 individuals from program A that you served, and then you had like 5 from program B, and then like 5 from program C. So this is kind of what that's getting at. So helping you like track individually, what does that number breakdown mean? But then you can also provide a story of, in program A, we experienced XYZ that went really well, or it didn't go really well, or we were hoping to, talk to more people. So this is our strategy. So whatever you feel like you want to provide contextually to us, and honestly also for yourself, in this box is welcome. And then your outcome. So these, again, number of individuals with increased health knowledge. So this is specifically, I can't remember which slide I chose, but again, these will be tied specifically to your project. So it'll come up. If you see some random ones, so like for here, I know this host site, for example, does not have anything to do with K through 12 students. So if you see a random one, I'll try to fix that before you submit, but just put 0. It's fine. It's probably just a Monique error on that side. And again, just kind of same thing with the poverty output or outcomes. Those are kind of more big picture. And so we don't really anticipate seeing a lot of these being reported on until the end of your Vista's term. So your like 3rd or 4th report, it might not be until when you actually submit numbers here that aren't just 0, and that's okay. So, we say it at the beginning of this section where we talk about performance measures. If you put 0, that's understandable. It is expected. It's okay. Then it's just really important to put in that context of, we're reporting 0 for this reporting period because of XYZ. And it can just be as simple as our Vista member just started, and so we're just kind of building up the program, or we're building up our initiatives. That is sufficient and definitely accepted. So. And that is it, my friends. So again, you can do save and resume later. We do have it set up. So it's all, we had the first page of the report, which is where you provide your information, you select your host site, your organization. And then the second page is literally all those questions we just went through. And we did that intentionally so that you don't have to feel like you have to put a answer or put some text into any of those boxes that do have a required asterisk. So you can just work on it all as you go. But again, you can always save and resume, and it will send you that link. You can do that many times, but you have that 30-day window from when you first save and resume to actually submit it. Otherwise, it's lost. And again, we don't have access to your draft version. Like, that just lives with you and that magical link. But we can always, we're always happy to look over something if you have a lot of questions about how it should be worded or something like that. But always feel free to just shoot us an email or give us a call. We're happy to walk through it. But yeah, that is the report. Any other final thoughts or comments, Jacqueline?
I don't think so. I guess the only thing that's running through my mind, and you might have covered this in the very beginning, but is the schedule for report due dates at the beginning of this report?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
That's just something to remember.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Probably have to go to the bottom of the previous page. Yes. So it is on there, and we'll try to get those on everyone's calendars too, so you have it in your calendar, or you can create your own calendar event for it too. That's okay too. Yeah, this is for our continuation of our grant year.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, the next report is due on September 13th, which is a Friday. So just know that it's due on a Friday at 5 p.m. So if you need the weekend, that's okay. We're not going to look at it until the next Monday, probably. So I get a lot of questions about that. But again, if you ever feel like you're just really rushed and you need an extension, just reach out to us. These do usually, the due dates do align when our reporting is due. So we maybe won't be able to be super flexible, but if it's just a day or two or a couple of days because you had like a work emergency or a personal emergency come up, we are more than willing to work with you on that. So just know you can always reach out, and it's better to ask us than stress about it, because we definitely don't want this to be a very stressful process for you. We want it to feel like you're just giving us information that you are happy and willing to share with us. So yes, well, I will stop sharing. And again, this is being recorded, so I know you're going to want to watch it like 5 times because it was just so enlightening. But I am going to pause the recording, and I'll leave the chat open. I'll stay on, and Jacqueline can stay on too, and we can just answer maybe any individual questions. And I will provide the link in the chat box for you and with the email.